in Esther chapter 9 this morning, and if you remember, chapter 8 ended with the tide turning, right? All of the crisis, all of the problems, all of the manipulation and the threats, it all gets turned. Authority and power got wrested from this guy Haman. All right, he's now dead, and it resides now with Mordecai and with Esther. And they are given permission from the king to command whatever they want. They're given the king's ring, and they can do what they think is best. And so they issue a counter edict for the 12th month and the 3rd day. The previous edict, under the control of Haman, was that all the Jews are to be killed, annihilated, destroyed, and their plunder, and taken their plunder. And so they issue a counter edict, which says on that day the Jews can assemble, they can protect themselves, and they can kill, destroy, and annihilate any of their enemies and take plunder of their property. And so the question at the end of chapter 8 is, so what's going to happen? Right? What is going to happen on the 12th month and the 3rd day? So between chapter 8 ending and chapter 9 starting, there's about 9 months' time that transpires in the kingdom of Persia. And as we look at chapter 9, I want to remind you that chapter 9 is a report of what happened. It is a report of what happened without comment, right? Without an evaluation by God, or even an evaluation by time. Both of those have a way of telling what happened and what it really means, right? A report without evaluation of God and time. So let's pick it up, chapter 9, the first 4 verses. On the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, the edict commanded by the king was to be carried out. On this day, the enemies of the Jews had hoped to overpower them, but now the tables were turned, and the Jews got the upper hand over those who hated them. The Jews assembled in their cities, in all the provinces of King Xerxes, to attack those seeking their destruction. No one could stand against them, because the people of all the other nationalities were afraid of them. And all the nobles of the provinces, the satraps, the governors, the king's administrators, helped the Jews because fear of Mordecai had seized them. Mordecai was prominent in the palace. His reputation spread throughout the province, and he became more and more powerful. The idea of the fear of the Jews is mentioned here again. This is the second time it has come up in the book. It came up at the end of chapter 8, and people were converting to Judaism because fear of the Jews had struck them. They get the help of the government officials, which is an oxymoron. I don't know how much government officials can actually help, but they get the help of the government officials. Why? Because of the fear of Mordecai. They're afraid of Mordecai, and they help. And we ought to bring, I don't know what a satrap is, we ought to bring that office back. That just is a good word for a government official. He's a satrap. It just sounds right. Mordecai is great in the palace, right? In the king's palace. He is great there. His fame is preceding him in the provinces. Literally, the text says he proceeds in greatness. He's walking in greatness. Boy, the tide has really turned. Just as an aside, in these verses, you will note there's no mention that God is feared. There's no mention of the greatness of God and of the glory of God. It is conspicuously absent. The Jews are feared, and Mordecai is great. Let's read on verse 5. It says, the Jews struck down all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them, and they did what they pleased to those who hated them. In the citadel of Susa, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men. They also killed, and it lists off these sons of Haman, who I'm not going to bother to read. Drop down to verse 10. The 10 sons of Haman, sons of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews. But they did not lay their hands on the plunder. So now they are able to kill and destroy their enemies. The text says they did what they pleased. And as a third aside, we do not have answered what would please God. We have answered what pleased them, but we do not have answered what would please God. In the city, 500 people are killed. The 10 sons of Haman are killed. But the note is they did not lay their hands on the plunder, right? They're not in it for the money. They're just in it for the killing. Verse 11. The number of those slain in the citadel of Susa was reported to the king that same day. And the king said to Queen Esther, the Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men and the 10 sons of Haman in the citadel of Susa. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what's your petition? It will be given you. What is your request? It will also be granted. Verse 13. If it pleases the king, Esther answered, give the Jews in Susa permission to carry out this day's edict tomorrow also, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged on the gallows. So the king commanded that this be done. An edict was issued in Susa, and they hanged the 10 sons of Haman. The Jews in Susa came together on the 14th day of the month of Adar, and they put to death in Susa 300 men, but they did not lay their hands on the plunder. Meanwhile, the remainder of the Jews who were in the king's provinces also assembled to protect themselves and get relief from their enemies. They killed 75,000 of them, but did not lay their hands on the plunder. This happened on the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th they rested, and they made it a day of feasting and joy. So, day 1, 12th month, the 3rd day, happens. The king finds out. He says, okay, Esther, what now? What do you want to do next? And her reply is, let's do it again tomorrow. Not only that, let's take these 10 sons and let's hang them, or more accurately would be impale them. They're already dead. Let's impale them. King says, okay. So that day, next day, 300 more are killed, and the 10 are impaled, and they don't touch the plunder. Elsewhere we find out, right, in this huge empire, right, which stretches what, from the west to Egypt, from the east over, I think, over to India, 75,000 people are killed, and no plunder is touched. So what do they do afterwards? Verse 18. The Jews in Susa, however, had assembled on the 13th and 14th, and then on the 15th day they rested, and they made it a day of feasting and joy. So we find out, both in the citadel of Susa, the capital city, and then the rest of the kingdom, what do you do afterwards? Hey, you take a rest. It's not easy putting to death that many people. You might have a banquet, and why don't we have a little feast and some joy? Chapter 9 up through verse 18 appears to be a resounding victory, a resounding success. And it's celebrated, right? It's celebrated. Matter of fact, we're going to find out next week, not only is it going to be celebrated, this is going to become a holiday. What happened here. Now, if you're listening to me and you have noted my less than wildness about what happened in this chapter, you've heard correctly. You may say to yourself, okay, Mr. Smarty Pants, okay, Sergeant Sarcasm, Mr. Judgy, what would you do? What would you do? You're Mordecai and Esther, and Mordecai and Esther, you're in their place. What would you do? Honestly, I might do the same or worse. I might do the same or worse. Because I know what's in my heart. And I know what I'm capable of. I know what I might do, given the chance to have all the power, all the authority, and to get exactly what I want. So when you ask me what would I do, We don't want to know the answer to that question. Here's the question we want to know the answer to. What does God want done? That's the question. See, we're supposed to read through this. Again, we're supposed to put ourselves in this spot as people who are worshipers of the Most High God. People who are worshipers of Yahweh, the God of creation, the God of the Tower of Babel, the God of the flood, the God of Sodom and Gomorrah, the God over Egypt, the God who could bring this group of people into the promised land in the first place, the God of the exile which they are experiencing. What does he want done? And the sad part is, we will never know, because he wasn't asked. Ouch. 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 And at the end of the day, I might be no different than them. The text is very clear. They did as they pleased. They did as they pleased. They did what was right in their own eyes. Right? That is the report. That's not the evaluation. So what would God want done? He's not asked. I wasn't there. He's not going to tell me what he wants done. But let's think about this for a moment. Let me tell you what I hope I would do. I can't guarantee it, but what I would like to think that I might be capable of doing in the moment, in the enabling of God. Maybe we share the truth with Xerxes. Maybe we share the truth about who God is. Xerxes, let me tell you, we are Jewish people, and here's why. And talk about, in the beginning, God creating the heavens and the earth. Right? Talk about God wanting to bring Israel to be a light to the nations. And putting him in that place in the promised land. So that what? So he could reveal himself to the world, so the rest of the world would know him, including the Persians. Maybe talk about history, right? How God has been at work through history and how he stepped in and stepped out. And maybe even start to talk about the prophecies and the promises and God's record. And how whether Xerxes knows it or not, he is in the hand of God, being used as one of the tools that God is disciplining his own people for his own purposes, to then bring them out and bring them back. Maybe do something like Jonah, who declares the word of the Lord, right, to Damascus. Maybe be like Daniel, who says, let me tell you what's going on, Nebuchadnezzar. Here it is. Here's what God has to say. And Nebuchadnezzar becomes one who acknowledges the Most High God. Is he a believer or will he be enough? I have no idea. But you read the book of Daniel, another exile, and how God is put to the forefront. And now you have a king who doesn't say, what do you want? The king says, I now know that the Lord Most High, he's God. I know this. Okay? Read the book of Daniel in light of this book. They just stand in stark contrast at what is done. Maybe rather than a tit-for-tat edict that has this celebrated slaughter, I wonder what would have happened if we said, you know what? God knows about the 12th month and the 3rd day. There's 9 months till then. Maybe we better repent. Maybe we better turn to God. Maybe we better surrender this to him. Maybe we ought to bake some unleavened bread and wait. And let God show up, right? Cast ourselves before him. I don't know. I'm just telling you things that I hope maybe I could have landed on in their place. But I'd be fooling myself if I said I would not maybe do the same or worse. You see, we look at our hearts, and it's easy to sit in evaluation of this because we have the details, we get to look back, we're comfortable, we're not under the pressure. It's easy to do it. Doesn't mean we shouldn't. It's just easy to do. Maybe they could have even cast a lot to see what God wanted. That's how this all got started in the first place. Somebody cast a lot about this day and said, we'll let the lot determine this day. Maybe they could have, I don't know, something. And you can say, well, you don't know. You just don't know. Very easy. Sit in judgment room. It is, and I don't. And that's exactly the point. I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. Because God has not been inquired of. I believe that's the point. He is not mentioned. He is not feared. He is not getting glory. But there's a celebration, and there's a banquet, and it looks good. What if he had been asked? What if people had turned their hearts to him? What if rather than, look, here's the ring, you get to do what edict, whatever you want, call the secretaries in, write it out, boom. What if they said, King, look, that's not the way we operate. We believe in Yahweh. And we believe he can guide us. We believe that he is here, and we want to know what he wants done. King, the question isn't not what do we want. The question is, what does he want for us? What if some alternate wisdom had come from God, and God's word had been known, God himself had been known, and what we find out is that people who did not know him started to fear him. And people who did not know him started to glorify him. And people who did not know him started to believe his word and see him as the Lord of time and creation and turn to him. What if Persians became worshipers and praisers? That's what God has been at from the beginning of time. If you read the Bible and think God is just thinking about Israel and he's just worried about Israel, no, he is worried about the nations of the world. He wants them to be a light. He has entered into a covenant with them so that they can reveal him to the nations. The nations can know who he is because they see a group of people who are living under his word and under his authority. And the life they have in this land is to be a witness to this is what life can be like under God. God has been about this from the beginning. Wouldn't that be a different kind of banquet and a different kind of joy in the land? Not that our enemies have been killed, but our enemies have come to believe in God. What a whole different scenario. Now, does it work that way very often? Not always. No, not always. But you see, we never know unless we try. James puts it this way: you don't have because you don't ask. You never see it. It never materializes because you don't ask God. What a verse to lay over this book. And we get to do it in hindsight, right? Pretty easy for me to stand here and say, take that, James, and lay it over this book, voila. Piece of cake to do it, right? Anybody that can read could do that. See, that's not the point. The point is, what do I do? Right? What do I do? Do I become the person who reacts and does what I think is right in my eyes, or am I the kind of person who says, wait a minute, God has something to say to me, to us here. What does he want? Right? This act of surrender, this act of submitting to him in prayer. Again, the book of James says, you know what? You make plans, you say, we're going to do this or that tomorrow, go to this city, and plans get made. He says, look, you don't even know what tomorrow holds. You just don't. What you should say is, the Lord willing, this is what we want to do. But maybe the Lord isn't willing. Maybe he's got something else in mind. And again, it's so easy to look at this and armchair quarterback this. Doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. I'm just saying it's easy. But we got to turn this and say, what about me and my life? Not just what would I have done there. What am I doing today? What am I doing with my life given my circumstances? Does God get any window to shine the light of his truth in? Does God get any question? Lord, what do you want? What do you want me to do? How do you want to guide me? Very famous verses, right? Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will direct your steps, or he will direct your path. I believe that's in Proverbs. That's the way. Lord, teach me from Xerxes. Teach me from Haman. Teach me from Mordecai. Teach me from Esther. Teach me from what happened, right? So that you are glorified, that you are feared, that your greatness gets seen and known. And we celebrate who you are. We celebrate your grace. We celebrate your forgiveness, right? We celebrate the Lord of the cross who says, Father, do to them what they're doing to me. Father, do to them what they're doing to me. No, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. Whole different way of going about things, isn't it? Right? But there's a promise to it. There's a promise to that word in Proverbs. Right? Don't trust your own understanding. Acknowledge him. He will direct your steps. He will work the path out. He will show you what's next and take you where he wants you to go. It may not be what's right in your eyes. It may not be according to your understanding, but it's according to his, right? And it's the way that we want. It's the way that we want. If that's going to happen, then I have to have a different heart than what comes naturally to me. Because what comes naturally to me is, oh, I'll see you on the 12th month and the 3rd day. Thank you very much. I'll see you on the battlefield. And one of us is not going home. And it's not going to be me. That's what's in my heart. And that comes so easily, and so quickly. We got to take that, we got to turn it over to God. Say, Lord, this is what I want to do, but not me, you. Let's pray.